Deal with the problem. We have 11 million people here who need a pathway to citizenship. Be a leader on that. But we're not going to get that out of this president. What we're not going to get out of this president is someone who approaches people who are fleeing the murder capitals of the world and does what is reflective of American values, which is to understand the strength of our arms, to embrace people who are fleeing harm. No, that's not what this president does. They arrive at our border and he says, go back to where you came from. That is not reflective of the values of who we are as Americans.
Senator Kamala Harris appealing to our hearts and our minds and our common sense, calling out the sheer inhumanity of the president's immigration policies, giving us a preview of the conviction and candor we'll see from her next week on the debate stage. I think that every time she's sort of in front of a camera or sort of presenting anything, she nails it. My question for you as someone who worked with her is what does that look like behind the scenes?
She's got a really good gut, I would call it, you know, a political gut. And she does have the ability to communicate forcefully and clearly and with moral clarity. And that's going to be really important. And she kind of needs to have a breakout moment.
Yeah.
She needs to somehow, and that's the scary thing about this debate for all these candidates. You know, if you're going to get, what, maybe a total of 8 minutes?
Maybe.
You're
lucky.
So how do you break through without making a fool of yourself? How do you push the envelope and stand out without people dismissing you and smelling that this is you trying to stand out? It's a really big challenge, but I think Kamala will do well. I think she's used to, when you've been in the courtroom and you have to think on your feet and you have to not know what the question is going to be or what the answer is going to be. I think it gives you a certain amount of confidence that she has that will serve her well in the debate. And by the way, you know, she was on our committee for Homeland Security and Government Affairs, so she is very well versed in these immigration issues because we had so many hearings on them. And she knows what all of us know that understand this subject matter. You can't deport millions of people. You know, at the rate you're going, I think they did the calculation, at the rate he's doing on deportation, it would take 24 years to get to millions of people. So this is another lie. There's not jail space. They have 60,000 beds. There's not enough jail space to deport all these people. So it is a cruel lie meant to score cheap political points of resentment and to scare a whole lot of people that don't deserve
Which
to be
has
scared.
no chance of actually doing anything about illegal immigration.
Right.
I want to get all of you on the record. Joe Biden in the news, and not for good reasons. The Times writes it up like this. Joe Biden recalling civility in Senate invokes 2 segregationist senators. This is from the New York Times report. Mr. Biden, speaking at a fundraiser at the Carlyle Hotel in New York City on Tuesday night, stressed the need to be able to reach consensus under our system and cast his decades in the Senate as a time of relative comedy. At the end, Mr. Biden noted that he served with the late Senators James O. Eastland of Mississippi and Herman Talmadge of Georgia, both Democrats who were staunch opponents of desegregation.
Yeah, so let's put politics aside for a second. What he said is just wrong. And when you juxtaposition with the day that we're going through today, today is Juneteenth, which is we're celebrating, acknowledging the end of slavery. The House Judiciary Subcommittee just held their first hearing on reparations. And what he's remembering fondly is a time when the Senate, the body of the Senate, was primarily white and male, and they were working overtime to deny the rights of people of color, to deny the rights of women. And this is what was happening during the time that he's remembering fondly. And that's incredibly problematic for so many people. And also, it really contrasts what you say, his video, I've heard you say this so many times, the 2x4 that he did with his announcement, using that Charlottesville video, right, where he put himself as the standard bearer against fear, against being on the right side of things, and it counters that, and it's incredibly problematic.
Let me just can I throw Dick Cheney in the mix just to make a broader point? When I worked for Bush and Cheney, People used to say, what do you think of Dick Cheney? And people would say, well, I hate everything he stands for, but when I see him, we ask each other about our families. Like, do you think that there's any chance he was saying, I hate what these men stood for, but I was able to work with them even though we just, is there a possibility for that in your mind?
He didn't say that, right?
Well, he
That's
kind
not,
of did.
Actually, okay,
did
so
kind
I
of
looked
say
into
that.
this because I was on our email server with people sending in corrections, and also Anita Dunn, who's a surrogate for him, was on later. And the full context was he did say that they were mean, and he didn't agree with them on anything, but he was talking about a time when the Senate functioned, not so much hearkening back to a particular day or culture or anything other than a functioning Senate.
And
When
he was
Senate
fighting these guys on civil rights. He fought them on civil rights. He worked against them on civil rights. I agree with you. It was a bad moment for him to call them up.
Those names.
As an example of other
we're
names.
praising segregationists here.
But he didn't say
that is
segregationist.
I'm going to give you all the time. I just want to read the quote again. I don't want to get
Okay.
too far from the language. Stress the need to, quote, be able to reach consensus under our system, cast his decades in the Senate as a time when they could do that. At one event, he noted how he served with the late Senators Eastland and Talmadge, both Democrats who were staunch opponents of desegregation. So, I accept everything you said at face value. I'm just saying, are you open to any explanation where he was making, like the point people used to make about Dick Cheney? I disagree with I heard it all the time. I disagree with everything. I was saying that even in Jim Comey makes this point. It's hard to hate up close.
Right. I know Joe Biden. I know him pretty well. I think he's a good guy. I love the guy, right? But there is this question of this generational gap, right? And I think this is what it plays to. People want, like that, the Charlottesville, when he brought up Charlottesville in that opening video, that's what people want to hear more of. But when you take us back to a time that's really, really dark, I get it. I get what he's talking about, bipartisanship, bringing the country together. But to bring up those names, I think it's just not.
Could have used other names.
Right, exactly.
And as a postscript, as much as the idea of bipartisanship sounds like a good idea, that concept right now is out of step with what the Democrats want.
Exactly.
The Democrats want to fight. The Democrats want to
base.
fight. They do not want to be reaching
I'm not
across the
sure
aisle.
all of
and shaking
America
hands.
does, though.
No, I know that.
I'm not sure
but
America
in a Democratic
does.
primary,
The
that's not
base
going to help.
May.
The base does.
And let me just say, Joe Biden is not getting credit for one thing. Nobody has written this up. I have never known a presidential candidate to invite the press pool into every fundraiser.
Yes, that is correct.
Every living room, every gathering. The press pool is at every one. I've never seen that before, and nobody's talking about it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.